All right, welcome to Stampscapes Lab. I'm going to be adding in some additional touches to this very large vellum piece. I was going to do this as a live, but there's going to be a lot of repetition here and not terribly dynamic to watch. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. So yesterday we got through a lot of the preliminary work on this with the 3 different layers back in front of the vellum and the imagery on the cardstock here. But what I started doing was I started defining the trunks a little bit more in terms of making them a little bit more three-dimensional. So I added a little bit of white pigment ink to one side of the trunks. And what I'm going to start off doing here is adding in some additional shading on the dark side of the trunks. Okay, so we went light on the light side, and what we've established in this scene is that the light source is going to be coming from right here. So the trunks to the right of that are going to be left side illuminated, or you can say right side shaded. Okay, so I'm adding some tone on the right side of some of these trunks, or maybe all of them. I'm doing blue just because I thought it would make a kind of nice addition, color addition to the color scheme in here. This blue goes really well with the greens, of course, and then it would go really well with the warmer tones up here with all the different foliage. Okay, now I'll add in some other color as well, but those will give me kind of a shading base layer color. Okay, so it's really subtle. I mean, you can see it a little bit, but they look a little bit more rounded than the ones over here on the left side. Okay, so the shading is on this side of the tree over here, and it'll be on the opposite side, right over here. I'm flipping this over just so I have easier access to these trees like this. I can see what I'm doing, right here from this angle. So when you're working on your pieces, don't be afraid to spin them around and to put your pieces at a really ergonomic and comfortable angle for whatever type of movement or application you're applying to your pieces. Okay, all right, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to pause here and we'll come back, and I should have all these other trees done. All right, so we've used aquamarine blue on all these trunks, using that little silvery kind of tone to it. Now we're going to enhance that more with some gray and I think some green in some areas. Okay, so let's add in a little bit of green tones. It'll be like, when you get this kind of reflection, when the light is reflecting off a certain color, it reflects back up into other objects, and especially if they're white, they reflect some of that color. So you can add some of this in here. You can even add some yellows or oranges in the top area with that foliage. So it might be a little bit extreme, but it could be more like an element of impressionism or something like that. We want to be in a fall type of setting like this with all these bright colors. You want to be kind of dazzled with kind of shimmering light. And so that's what we're trying to, attempting to depict here. Okay, going on with some gray here. Have some of these background trunks, and sometimes if you want to make the trunk in the foreground stand out a little bit more, what you do is you darken the back one. So even if maybe light might not be hitting that way, you can just do it for artistic license. You're trying to emphasize something else. So like this trunk right here, I'm kind of darkening a lot more than this front one. A lot of times I darken in the base of my trunks quite a bit more so that it looks like they're sitting into the scene a little bit more. So it gives them a little bit more heavier visual weight by kind of anchoring them at the base, okay? Okay. That is this side right over here. See, they're kind of taking on a little bit more of a interesting tone. And you can kind of vary things. There's going to be light coming in at different angles, so I might add some tone across there. It doesn't have to be just straight kind of darkness in one area. You can kind of have it light and dark like this going across the the trunks. Or maybe this one's like halfway in darkness right over here. So again, it's just not, it's just not so kind of monotonous, with everything kind of being illuminated the same way. Or the objects could be illuminated in a different way, across their entire length like that. All right, let me pause this one and I'll address these ones up here, similar to how I did the ones on the left. All right, we've established some deeper shadows across the entirety of this piece on the tree trunks. We addressed it a little bit where the trunk meets the forest floor a little bit too. And I want to go in and add in some extra intensity again. I started doing this yesterday, but I wanted to add in quite a bit more of intensity, meaning brightness, tone down here on the forest floor, just to add a lot more temperature and intensity richness into the piece. So I don't want it to look anemic in here. So when I start doing these types of things, I usually start off fairly light and dull, then you get darker and brighter in select areas, not everywhere, or it could be everywhere, but you just kind of you let your eye be the judge of it and kind of you know, kind of decide as you're doing it what needs to be done or enhanced, or sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you dulls things out if it's standing out a little bit too much. De-emphasize, that's the word I was looking for. Sometimes you de-emphasize something if it's standing out too much. It's a little bit too bright or something like that, or too light. Okay, like that. Okay, that was yellow. Let's go in with some brighter greens in the shadow areas. Brighter and a little bit of a warmer green in this yellow green, apple green. We need to really kind of increase the intensity in some areas. You don't do it everywhere, otherwise there's kind of no variation and contrast. Contrast isn't always just in terms of light and shade. You know, darkness, it's intensity, it's brights versus dull, it's warm versus cool. Texturally, textural contrasts, soft, hard. All right, so kind of bumping things up a little bit here and there. The Vellum really accepts the colored pencil very well. You're able to really layer quite easily on this paper or on this surface. All right, now let's see about kind of a little bit more containment in this scenario. We'll go a little bit darker on the perimeter. I probably should have set some tone on the white base paper and just kind of toned it a little bit before applying the vellum overlay on top. But we can add in darkness using our colored pencil here too. Something like that. It's a little bit darker on the edges like that. We'll add in some additional imagery as well, if we can. I don't know. It's a little, sometimes a little tricky stamping over the top of colored pencil. Let me try something here with a little bit of green up here in these leaf areas. The green might seem kind of odd in that I didn't stamp out any of my leaves in green, but we have our acrylic paint pens that will be adding some green up here with. And bringing some of this green up here too, it's creating a little bit more of a relationship to the lower half. All right. It's not like super kind of obvious up here with this color. I just laid down kind of a light layer of it. All right, let's deepen some shadows again. Let's go in with black, which will be, the darkest color that I'll be using. So right down in here, I'm just kind of anchoring the trunk down a little bit, and then I'm bringing this out a little bit. I'm not going to be bringing the black out as far as I did with greens and, all the other colors that were used, gray. All right, a little bit more in the trees. And again, I'm not doing it the full length of the trunk. I'm kind of breaking it up a little bit. Everything's looking a little bit more dimensional, isn't it, now? Yeah, a little bit more contrast in here. This impression didn't come out too dark, so we'll tweak it a little bit here, especially in some of the darker shadow areas. Like that. All right, now let's see, let's add in, I think we're at the paint pen stage. I mean, there's different things we can do, but I think the paint pens would be a good way to go. So we have orange, yellow, and green. I don't know, not quite pastel versions, but fairly light. And we'll start applying more to the canopy. We'll get some shimmery effects down here. Maybe a little bit more white as well. Let's start off with green, I think. Kind of going in front of some of the trunks and back of the others. So it's like some of the leaves are in front of some trunks and back of some others. I'll lay some of this down up here, and then we'll bring some of this down here. I'll pause for the rest of the top section. All right, I've covered some of this area up here, and I start adding some on some of these lower, I don't know, whatever, saplings coming up or branches coming out here. That'll get a lot of the yellow, though, but I wanted to create a little bit of a base using some green. All right, now that's just some overhanging limbs in here, okay? So it's adding to the general foliage up top like that. But what we'll do here is kind of on these open areas in here where there's a little bit more illumination, what we'll just do is we'll start adding in some lighting and some shimmer into these areas, okay? So it just kind of gives it a lot more kind of textural richness by having this in all of the areas really, but it'll add quite a bit of character to this area down below. So I'm kind of adding it in the areas where you don't really see it too much, but then when it goes out into the darker area, it shows up a little bit more. So see right here, it's about the same value. And then you go into the darker area touch. All right, kind of right in here, huh? It's kind of waking up a lot of the area in here, kind of bringing it to life. All right, now, as I've been working down here, hopefully the top section up above has been drying. If you add wet over wet, they kind of start to merge quite a bit, so we're letting that kind of set up a little bit while working down here. One of the, I guess, good things about working on such a large piece is that when you work on one section, kind of move to the next, you have a lot of time for a lot of drying time, potentially. I don't know if it's adequate or not, but let's go in with some orange up here. Okay. It's quite a bit of a darker orange. Let me see if I have a little bit of a lighter orange. I don't know if I do. Maybe not. I have a lighter orange in the form of my smaller pens, but this is like a really big piece, so I'm going to largely stick with my 2 to 3 millimeter paint pens. Now, orange, I think I'm going to keep. I don't know if it's a minimal, but kind of less of it. Alright, I guess we need to bring some of that down into this lower section as well a little bit. Yeah, that orange is looking actually pretty good down here. It needed a little bit of change in hue, I think. There needed to be some changes in hue down here. Yeah, this orange really kind of brought the scene to life. All right, getting a little bit more exciting. Now, there's orange everywhere in here, and now there's kind of two layers of tones. They're kind of drying a little bit slowly, so I think I need to give it about 5 minutes, let it rest before I go on with yellow, because I want my yellow to kind of stand out decently, but if it's just going over a wet orange, it's not really going to stand out very much because it's going to merge with that orange. And by the time this yellow dries, it's going to be kind of some version of orange and yellow, which isn't bad sometimes, but I want this to really stand out in here and not have to kind of go in with additional layer over layer over layer just to get a real nice clear light yellow addition in here, because it already dries somewhat a little bit more see-through than what it looks like when it's been freshly applied. So we need to give it the best chance of addition without kind of darkening. Okay, we are back and we are ready for yellow. A little watery. Let's try to give it a little bit more of a shake up here. I have a couple different versions of yellow in my large 3mm size one. I'm going to go with the brighter one though to start off with. Brighter and lighter. This one's more of like a dull. And I expect this brighter, lighter one to get duller anyway because it kind of dries a little bit more see-through than what it looks like. So might as well just start off a little bit lighter like this. See, I'm putting some in the background, but I'm putting some over the front of the a few of these trunks. So you can really see the difference between here and here. But that yellow is just not going to stay that light. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more see-through, but we can add in additional layers as well. So This is really kind of bringing a lot of this area to life. All right, now I have some areas down in here, right alongside this pathway, where there's like a little bit of these bushes that I haven't really addressed yet. I put a little bit of shading into them, but not much. It's like some grass and some rocks. Or, I don't know, like a little hedgy type of thing. Alright. Alright, going on with some white here. I don't know how much white I'll use in here, but let's take a look. Well, maybe I'll get my trees a little bit more, my trunks a little bit more. We're doing the opposite side of the trunk from the shadows. Now we've already done this, but I'm just kind of adding a little bit more. All right, some of the areas right here really removed the illuminated side of the birch. It's looking a little bit more dimensional, I'd say. Okay, now just adding in a little bit of extra shimmer. Maybe to the lighter leaves in here. I don't know. You don't have to be that careful, but that's my concept right here. All right. Time for a little bit of the forest floor with this. I'm kind of using this to represent, it's a little bit of highlighting in here, but right here with these, I just see it as something more like little wildflower clusters. All right, we have our subject matter here. I've stamped her out. She's from the Moonlight Dreamers set, nature set. I think I'm going to put her right here up against this tree, leaning up against this tree. I'm going to put her at a slight angle to kind of slope down just a touch like that. Go like that. It wasn't a figure that I was thinking about using in here, but it just occurred to me when I was doing the live stream the other day that, yeah, I think, you know, that figure would go nicely in here. It's either that one or this this figure like this, kind of, she has her dress like that. I would put her behind that trunk right here, but or she could have been like that too. But I thought this one right here, kind of sitting up against the tree, was kind of nice too, so kind of last minute decision. Okay, now what we're doing is we're anchoring her down into the scene with a little bit of shadow work. Something like that. Put a little bit of a, you know, kind of like a drop shadow behind her. It's kind of hard to get like right up next to her because, you know, just because she is dimensional and standing out from the background. That was black, but I'll go in here with a little bit of green down at this lower area, just to give the shadow a little bit more, oh, kind of richness, dimension. The green looked pretty good, so I'm going to add in some more. All right. Now, I don't know if adding some more of these branches down here will show up or not. I'm trying to think. There's so much paint and wax up here. If I stamp over it, maybe with a brilliance black, it'll be nice and black. Um, okay, so I'm thinking about using some light beams in here too. So let me add a couple of these branches in here. Okay, so I'm thinking about um, possibly using the stays on ink, but I don't know if I'll get as good of an impression, a thick impression in black as I will with a pigment ink. So I think I'm going to opt for this, and we'll just see how it goes. I'll put one over here, and we'll just see how it looks. I mean, I suspected it should be okay, but we'll see. I'll put a real small one right here in the corner. Small piece of the leaves. We'll press and hold and let it set up and transfer. With the stays on ink, sometimes if you hold too long and it dries, and then you lift up, the ink comes up with the rubber because it's dried completely. But this isn't going to be that situation. This ink will dry on here, but it dries slower than like a solvent ink. Okay, that looks really good there. Let's go ahead and add these in pre light beams, okay? And I'll just have them periodic throughout the piece. I don't know, I'll just do one at a time and I'll kind of gauge from there. I didn't darken my corners here, so we'll do some darkening with, some added foliage. Let's go down quite a bit on this one. I think I'll need to press and hold this one for quite a bit. Just because I'm covering up so much, I'm stamping over the top of a lot of acrylic paint, which really seals off the surface. So I think this one right here didn't stamp out as dark because I just didn't hold it for as long. I mean, when this dries too, I'm not quite sure how dark it is going to be, so I might go in there with a, like a black paint pen and add a little bit more kind of dimension and value to the leaves. Not all of them. I'm not going to go over every single bit, but it might kind of, because acrylic is kind of shiny and it's a little bit raised. It's not like super raised, but it might add some nice additional darkness and, like I said, dimension. It's a little bit shinier probably. All right, I will pause this and we'll get some additional touches in here, and then I'll probably add a little bit to the lower section as well. All right, there it is, added to the top section. That. I'm getting a little glare I see when I do this. Those leaves are pretty dark up there. And then we'll come in from the lower section as well in a couple areas. Just to get that corner kind of darkening, the vignetting going on. Go with a pretty big cluster right here. Because again, I'm stamping up so high and going over so much of that wax of the colored pencil and the kind of that sealed shiny surface of the acrylic paint pen will hold this for a little bit longer. All right, there we go. We just have the light beams to add in, and that should put pretty close to the final touches on this scene. Very big scene, involved one too, and very fun, very dimensional, and not first in terms of the technique used here, but I don't, just in terms of the scale. And sometimes when you change the scale of something, there's just different things that come into play. It allows you to do more things too, and really emphasize something just because you have so much more space to do it. But I don't know, there's just different types of considerations that come into play too, just from thinking about doing this. And there's a lot of monotony going on, so it's like, yeah, you might treat some of the trees a little bit differently. Like I said, adding in more shadows or something like that here or there to the piece. Darkening some trees where if you're doing a smaller piece and there's 3 trees, maybe you treat them the same and it's not so repetitive a type of thing going through, quarter-page card or something like that. But, with a larger piece and there's, whatever, 20 trees or something like that with the same thing going on, then you have to kind of, rethink it a little bit, or rethink the treatment of some objects. And a little highlighting on our little pathway here. When you have this kind of illuminated pathway, it kind of welcomes the viewer into the scene. It's kind of like leading their way into the piece. For a welcoming type of visual scenario. All right, so that is stamped out. I'm going to give this, that Brilliance ink, a little bit of time to dry on here. I'd rather let it air dry for a little bit and then just heat set it to really fix it down, rather than having more heat on here to get it to completely dry from being absolutely wet. All right, it's less heat time on that vellum that's adhered down there. I don't want the adhesive to be kind of coming undone, from the heat and all that type of thing. So a little bit of a different approach with this at this point in time in terms of heating and drying. So, but the Brilliant seemed like a pretty good way to go. It gave me some really deep impressions, and the Brilliant should dry on here with no problem. Okay, I've heat set my perimeter leaves here just a little bit. They're still a little bit moist, but I wanted to get to those light beams in here at some point in time today. So I am going to stop this recording here, and I think I'm going to finish off the light beams and final touches on a live stream. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, I don't know, this process right here. I'm at the 1 hour, 5 minute mark. I would say that it took me about, I don't know, probably about 2 hours to do this. So half on, half off type of segment here as far as those techniques went.